Chris was making his way down a crowded sidewalk, his mind occupied with thoughts of work and errands, when a commotion ahead caught his attention. A woman had stumbled and fallen, her belongings scattered across the pavement. Without hesitation, he rushed forward. "Are you all right?" he asked, extending his hand. She looked up, her long brown hair falling away from her face, revealing striking green eyes that seemed oddly familiar. "I'm okay," she said with a sheepish smile, accepting his help. Just a little embarrassed. As Chris helped her to her feet, a strange sense of déjà vu washed over him. There was something about her that tugged at his memory, but he couldn't quite place it. "Thank you so much," she said, brushing off her navy blue coat. "I really should watch where I'm going." "No problem at all," Chris replied, bending down to gather her scattered belongings. "I'm just glad you're not hurt." As he handed her the last of her things, their eyes met again, and this time, recognition flickered across her face. "Wait a minute," she said, her voice filled with surprise.
Chris.
"Chris Henderson." Chris furrowed his brow, trying to place her. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" The woman's face broke into a wide grin. "It's me."
Dustin.
"Well, Maya now." She laughed softly. "I can't believe it's you." The revelation hit Chris like a thunderbolt. Dustin had been his best friend throughout childhood, inseparable until Dustin's family had suddenly moved away without warning when they were 15. The person standing before him now was undoubtedly different, but those green eyes were unmistakable. "Dustin," Chris stammered. "I mean Maya."
Wow. I don't know what to say.
"It's been so long." Maya laughed, the sound achingly familiar. "I know. It's a lot to take in. I've changed quite a bit since we last saw each other." "Yeah," Chris said, still processing. "I'm sorry, I'm just in shock." "How have you been? What happened? You just disappeared one day." Maya's smile faltered slightly. "It's a long story. Do you have some time? Maybe we could grab a coffee and catch up." "Absolutely," Chris replied, his curiosity fully awakened. "There's a nice cafe just around the corner." As they walked, Chris couldn't help stealing glances at Maya, marveling at the transformation in his old friend. She carried herself with a confidence that Dustin had never possessed, her movements graceful and assured. The cafe was warm and inviting, a welcome refuge from the chilly autumn air outside. They found a quiet corner and settled in with their drinks. "Maya," Chris began. "That's a beautiful name." "Thank you," she replied, her hands wrapped around her mug. "I chose it myself. It felt right." Chris nodded, searching for the right words. "I'm happy for you. But I have to ask, what happened? One day you were there, and the next you were gone. No goodbye, no explanation. I tried calling, but your number was disconnected." Maya's expression turned solemn. "I'm so sorry about that, Chris. It wasn't my choice. My parents found out some things about me that they couldn't accept. They decided to move us away immediately, convinced that a fresh start would." She made air quotes with her fingers, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "Fix me." "That must have been awful," Chris said, feeling a deep pang of sympathy. Maya nodded.
"It was.
But in a way, it was also the push I needed to be true to myself. Once I was away from everything familiar, I finally had the space to figure out who I really was." Chris leaned forward, genuinely interested. "And who is that? Who is Maya?" A warm smile spread across her face. "Maya is who I always was inside. She's strong, confident, and finally at peace with herself. It took a lot of work to get here, but I wouldn't change it for anything." As they continued talking, Chris found himself amazed at the person his old friend had become. Maya spoke about her journey with a quiet strength that was deeply inspiring. She told him about the struggles she had faced, the support she had found, and the life she had carefully built for herself. "I'm an architect now," she said proudly. "I design spaces where people can feel safe and at home." "That's incredible," Chris replied, genuinely impressed. "I always knew you had a talent for drawing." Maya laughed. "Remember those elaborate tree houses we used to design? I guess some dreams really do come true." As the afternoon wore on, Chris felt the years of separation melting away. Despite all the changes, so much of his old friend remained in Maya. The quick wit, the infectious laugh, the passion for life. "What about you, Chris?" Maya asked, turning the conversation around. "What have you been up to all these years?" Chris shrugged, suddenly feeling as though his life paled in comparison. "Oh, the usual. College, a job in marketing. Nothing as exciting as your story." Maya reached across the table and placed her hand on his. "Hey, don't sell yourself short. Your life is just as valid and important. Tell me everything." Encouraged by her warmth, Chris opened up about his own journey, his struggles to find his place in the world, his failed relationships, and his recent promotion at work. Maya listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering insights that only an old friend could provide. As the sun began to set outside the cafe window, Chris realized they had been talking for hours. "I can't believe how quickly the time has flown," he said, checking his watch. Maya nodded, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I know. It's been wonderful catching up with you, Chris. I've missed this." "Missed you." "Me too," Chris replied, surprised by the depth of emotion in his own voice. "I never realized how much until now." They lingered over their cold coffee, neither wanting the reunion to end. Finally, Maya glanced at her phone and sighed. "I hate to say it, but I should probably get going. Early meeting tomorrow." As they gathered their things and stepped out into the cool evening air, an awkward silence fell between them. It was Maya who broke it. "Chris," she said softly, "I know this has probably been a lot to take in. I want you to know that I understand if you need time to process everything. But I hope we can be friends again." Chris looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just the changes, but the essence of the person he had cared for so deeply in his youth. "Maya," he said, his voice firm, "you were my best friend then, and if you'll have me, I'd be honored to be your friend now." The smile that lit up her face was radiant. Without warning, she threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. As they parted, Chris felt a sense of excitement he hadn't experienced in years. "So, same time next week?" he asked. Maya grinned. "It's a date." As he watched her walk away, Chris marveled at the strange twists and turns of life. He had started the day going through the motions, and now he felt as though a missing piece of himself had been restored. In the weeks that followed, Chris and Maya fell into a comfortable routine of regular meetups. They explored the city together, revisiting old haunts and discovering new favorites. With each passing day, Chris found himself more and more in awe of the person Maya had become. One sunny afternoon, they decided to have a picnic in the park where they had spent so much time as children. As they spread out their blanket under a sprawling oak tree, Chris couldn't help but laugh. "What's so funny?" Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. "I was just thinking about the time we tried to build a fort up in this very tree," Chris explained. "Remember? We were convinced we were going to live up there forever." Maya's eyes lit up with the memory. "Oh God, yes, and then you fell and sprained your ankle. Your mom was so mad at me." "Hey, it wasn't your fault, I was clumsy," Chris protested good-naturedly. As they reminisced, Chris found himself studying Maya's face. The way the sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling her skin with patterns of light and shadow, was quietly mesmerizing. He realized with a start that he was developing feelings for her that went beyond friendship. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. Was it okay to feel this way? Would it complicate their newly rekindled friendship? He pushed the thoughts aside, determined to simply enjoy the moment. As the weeks turned into months, Chris and Maya's friendship deepened. They shared their hopes, fears, and dreams with each other. Chris found himself opening up about things he had never told anyone else, and Maya did the same. One chilly evening, as they walked along the river after dinner, Maya suddenly stopped and turned to face him. "Can I tell you something?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Of course," Chris replied, concerned by her tone. "You can tell me anything." Maya took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about us lately, about our friendship, and about how it's changing." Chris felt his heart quicken. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Maya said, her eyes meeting his, "that I think I'm falling in love with you, Chris. And it scares me because I don't want to ruin what we have." But I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. For a moment, Chris was speechless. Then, without thinking, he leaned in and kissed her. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "I'm in love with you, too," Chris said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have been for a while now." Maya's smile was radiant. "Really? You're okay with everything?" Chris took her hands in his. "Maya, I love you for who you are. All of you. Your past, your present, and whatever the future holds. You're the most amazing person I've ever known." Tears glistened in her eyes as she pulled him into a tight embrace. "I never thought I'd find this," she murmured against his chest. "Someone who knows all of me and loves me anyway." "Always," Chris promised, holding her close. As they stood there by the river, the city lights twinkling around them, Chris marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From childhood friends to strangers to lovers, their path had been far from straightforward. But standing there with Maya in his arms, he knew that every twist and turn had been worth it. In the months that followed, Chris and Maya's relationship blossomed. They navigated the challenges that came with any new romance, but also faced unique obstacles related to Maya's identity. Chris found himself learning and growing in ways he never expected, becoming an ally and advocate not just for Maya, but for the wider transgender community. There were difficult moments, of course. The first time they ran into someone from their past who had known Maya as Dustin, Chris watched with a mixture of pride and protectiveness as she handled the situation with grace and dignity. He stood beside her, offering quiet support, and knew in that moment that he would do so for the rest of his life, if she would let him. As their one-year anniversary approached, Chris began to plan something special. He wanted to show Maya just how much she meant to him, how proud he was of her journey, and how excited he was for their future together. On the night of their anniversary, he took her to the rooftop garden of the building where she had designed her first major architectural project. As they stepped out onto the terrace, Maya gasped. The entire space was lit with twinkling fairy lights, and at the center stood a small table set for two. "Chris," Maya breathed, taking in the scene. "This is beautiful." Chris smiled, pulling out her chair. "I wanted tonight to be perfect." As they enjoyed their meal, Chris couldn't take his eyes off her. Maya was radiant in a deep green dress that matched her eyes, her hair cascading over her shoulders in soft waves. "I have something for you," Chris said as they finished dessert. He reached into his pocket and produced a small box. Maya's eyes widened. He opened it to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a butterfly pendant. "I chose this because it reminded me of you," Chris explained. "The butterfly is a symbol of transformation, of becoming who you were always meant to be. You've shown me what true courage and authenticity look like, Maya. You've transformed not just yourself, but my whole world." Tears welled in Maya's eyes as Chris fastened the necklace around her neck. "It's perfect," she whispered, touching the pendant gently. "I love you so much." "I love you, too," Chris replied, taking her hands in his. "This past year has been the best of my life. You've shown me what it means to love fully and without reservation. You've taught me to be brave, to stand up for what's right, and to always be true to myself." He took a deep breath, his heart pounding. Then he slid off his chair and got down on one knee. "Maya Elizabeth Carter, will you marry me?" Maya's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. For a moment, she seemed unable to speak. Then, with a joyful laugh, she nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, of course I'll marry you." Chris slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into a kiss. As they embraced, the city spread out below them, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. Later that night, Maya said quietly, "I never thought I'd have this. A life where I could be truly myself, loved for who I am. You've given me that gift, Chris." Chris kissed the top of her head. "You gave me an even greater gift," he replied. "You showed me what love really means. It's not about who someone was or what they look like. It's about the essence of a person, their soul. And yours, Maya, is the most beautiful I've ever known. Maya propped herself up and looked into his eyes. Promise me something? Anything, Chris replied without hesitation. Promise me that no matter what challenges we face, we'll face them together. That we'll always be honest with each other, even when it's hard. That we'll never stop growing, both as individuals and as a couple. Chris smiled, pulling her close. I promise, he said. With all my heart. The wedding planning process was a whirlwind of activity, filled with both joy and challenges. Chris and Maya were determined to create a celebration that honored their past and their future, while staying true to who they were as a couple. One of the first hurdles was deciding how to handle Maya's family. Her parents had not been part of her life since her transition, and the wounds from their rejection still ran deep. After many long, emotional conversations, Maya decided to reach out to them. I want to give them one last chance, she explained to Chris. Not for their sake, but for mine. I need to know I did everything I could. Chris supported her completely, holding her hand as she made the difficult phone call. To their surprise, her parents agreed to meet. The reunion was tense and awkward at first. Her parents struggled to reconcile the daughter before them with the son they remembered. But as the afternoon wore on, Chris watched with quiet pride as Maya shared her journey with patience and grace. By the end of the meeting, while not fully accepting, her parents had taken a genuine step toward understanding. We can't promise we'll be comfortable at the wedding, her father said. But we'd like to try if you'll have us. Maya hugged them both, tears in her eyes. That's all I ask, she replied. As they left the meeting, Chris squeezed Maya's hand. You were amazing in there. I'm so proud of you. Maya smiled, though her eyes were still damp. Thank you for being here with me. I couldn't have done it without you. The rest of the planning went more smoothly. They chose a small, intimate ceremony in the botanical gardens where they had rekindled their friendship. Maya designed her own wedding dress, a stunning creation that perfectly blended elegance with her unique style. Chris found himself constantly in awe of his fiancée's strength and resilience, whether she was dealing with a difficult vendor or navigating the complexities of a wedding party that honored both her past and her present. Maya handled every challenge with grace and quiet determination. Finally, the big day arrived. As Chris stood at the altar waiting for Maya to appear, a deep sense of peace and rightness washed over him. This was where he was meant to be. This was who he was meant to be with. When Maya appeared at the end of the aisle, a collective gasp rose from the assembled guests. She was breathtaking in her self-designed gown, a vision of beauty and confidence. But what struck Chris most was the pure joy radiating from her face. This was Maya in her fullest expression, embraced and celebrated by the people who loved her. As she reached him, Chris took her hands in his, unable to stop the tears that welled in his eyes. You're so beautiful, he whispered. Maya squeezed his hands. So are you, she replied, her voice full of love. The ceremony was everything they had hoped for and more. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising not just love and fidelity, but understanding, growth, and unwavering support. When the officiant pronounced them married, the cheers from their friends and family were deafening. At the reception, Chris was moved to see Maya dancing with her father, a moment neither of them had been certain would happen. He watched as she twirled and laughed, finally free to be her authentic self in every aspect of her life. Later, as they swayed together during their first dance as a married couple, Chris held Maya close. How does it feel to be Mrs. Henderson? He asked softly. Maya's smile was radiant. It feels like coming home, she replied. Like I finally found where I belong. Chris kissed her gently. We belong together, he said. Now and always. As the night wore on and their guests celebrated around them, Chris and Maya stole a quiet moment alone on the garden terrace. Stars twinkled above them, mirroring the joy in their hearts. Can you believe we're here? Maya asked, leaning her head on Chris's shoulder. Sometimes I feel like I'm dreaming. Chris wrapped his arm around her. If it's a dream, I never want to wake up, he replied. But it's real, Maya. We're real. Our love is real. Maya lifted her head and met his gaze. I know, she said softly, and I'm so grateful. For you. For everything that led us to this moment. Chris thought about the journey that had brought them here, from childhood friends to strangers, from strangers to lovers, from lovers to spouses. Their path had been filled with twists and turns, challenges and triumphs. But standing there with Maya in his arms, he knew with absolute certainty that every single step had been worth it. I love you, Maya Henderson, he said, his voice full of emotion. With all that I am and all that I will be. Maya's eyes shimmered with tears of joy. And I love you, Chris Henderson, she replied. Today, tomorrow, and always.